Hi, I'm Craig Richardson, and welcome to Mind to Heart. In this show, we take a journey from our logical, critical mind to our powerful heart center, where real transformation occurs. My guests help us understand our journeys by telling us about their paths and lessons they learned along the way. I want to continue today with a theme I've covered over, well, really almost every show it comes up, because I think that's where we are, and that's this concept of 3D versus 5D. I first started hearing about these dual dimensions about a year ago. I read Maureen St. Germain's book, Waking Up in 5D, and I was also in the midst of my Atlantic University master's, where the term was bandied about a little bit. It was also about a year ago I enrolled in a course that had a tremendous impact on me and my transformation. It's called, it's called Creating a Meaningful Life. My first thought when I saw the title was, and I'm old enough to remember the early days of Saturday Night Live, is it might be something similar to Deep Thoughts by Jack Handey. You might have to Google that to be able to get that reference. And while the course delved into concepts like 5D, an awakened soul, deep and creative living, and an expanded consciousness, most importantly, it allowed me to spend the semester with my guest today, Jules Maloney, who was my mentor for the course. These concepts can be pretty heady sometimes, and Jules is certainly a great teacher, having dedicated her career to education. Yet what's most striking about Jules, which I'm sure you'll see momentarily, is that she lives it. She takes these deep and difficult concepts, and through her words and actions, she brings them to life in a way that is meaningful, life-changing, and beautiful. She's a living metaphor for what it means to live in 5D. So now I'd like to bring her in. In addition to teaching at AU, she's an author, channeling both the Christ and Magdalene consciousnesses, which we'll hear more about. And as I typically do, we'll get into these topics in the first half of the show, and then we'll dive into Jules' own personal life as she moved from 3D to 5D. Jules, welcome to Mind to Heart.
Thank you.
It's great to see you again.
You too.
Unfortunately, when you graduate, they kind of show you the door, and then you don't get to spend time as we did. Two courses. In addition to the one I mentioned, I also did a dreams course with you as well. So I had you back to back last year, and really enjoyed the experiences. So as I said in the intro, we hear these terms bandied about, 3D, 5D. What exactly does that mean to you?
Well, 3D is what we've mostly grown up with, especially us elder generations. I think the young ones coming in now have a very different experience of who they are and of themselves. But 3D is a denser vibration. It's an experience of living in duality, polarity, shades of gray, of being concerned with how others perceive us, how we're going to make it in the world, being stuck in our mind, our ego, our thoughts, what we're taught, our subconscious beliefs that come through the generations to us. I'm not good enough. I don't know what's going on here. I'll never be enough. I don't know, etc. All these huge subconscious beliefs that program our experience of life. And so it's when we open our heart, I believe, that we make our entryway into a higher vibrational experience of ourselves and thus everything around us as well.
Well, so, and this world, I mean, they talk about this time as a time of an awakening, obviously, in the Aquarian age as well. I assume this is kind of all part of this and pre-planned at some higher level than we know about.
That's right. So yeah, just in terms of cycles, okay, we've really come to the end of the Piscean age, which is about a 2,300 year cycle. And we've entered into the Aquarian age. So these ages have different qualities. And, Pisces is the sign that is symbolized by the two fish swimming in opposite directions, right? And so it just shows that aspect of the Piscean qualities and mentality and this past age we've lived through. And we've lived through it many times in various lifetimes. Okay. So, and that is the dark and light, the right and wrong, good and bad, movement, not movement, stuckness, not stuckness, etc. It was a time of devotion to outside things, okay, and putting trust and in authorities, whether they be priests, politicians, teachers, gurus, etc. And but the highest divine quality that was being explored during that period was divine love. Okay, and the Christ exemplified that, taught that, love one another. And so, as Magdalene channeled to me at one point some years ago, what we were learning during that period was everything on the spectrum from hate to love, and self-hatred to self-love. And also coming into this Aquarian age where the keynote is freedom. Okay, so once we have self-love and love, forgiveness, and acceptance of others and of the world, we move into more and more and more into states of what is being called these days, and it's very apt, divine sovereignty.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. Can you explain that a little bit more? That's a great term.
So that we are in charge of our thoughts, actions, health, how much light we're bringing in, how aware we are of our consciousness. And, you know, we talk a lot about expanding consciousness, but we are consciousness. So this is another thing, that we are consciousness, the entire field of consciousness, cosmic consciousness, universal consciousness, galactic, planetary, the field of humanity, the collective consciousness, our own consciousness, all is consciousness. Okay. What we are doing now is we're enhancing and increasing our awareness of consciousness. We're expanding our awareness. And as we all know, one of those ways is mindfulness, meditating, simple breathing. Whenever we come back to our breath, to breathing, we come into an enhanced state of awareness. So anyway, so divine sovereignty is taking back our power, so to speak, taking back our power from the media, from the beliefs we've grown up in religions, you know, that we're born in sin, we're blah, 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 you know, that, et cetera, that we have to confess that there's something wrong with us. There's something innately wrong with us, when in fact, we are divine humans. And that is what is going on and is going to be going on for the next 2,300 years in the Aquarian age, is the full merge of the divine creator, mother, father, God, with the human in all of its beautiful, diverse mechanisms. So each of our chakras is a huge energetic portal through which we receive and express energy, cosmic energy, God energy. So from the first chakra, which is our connection with Mother Earth and her sentience, her consciousness, and also all her life, all the kingdoms of nature, and also the subtle kingdoms of nature, the elementals, the fairies, the elves, the etc. Right? And so that's our grounding with Mother Earth and her heart and her sentience and all her life. And it's also our sexuality, of course, and our fertility. And then we get in the second chakra, we receive energy and we express it in all kinds of creativity and creative forms. And the energy flows through us. It's a fiery energy, and we express and create. And then the solar plexus, which is our identity, our sense of self,
Our self-power, is it not?
Our self-power, that's right. And our empowerment or lack thereof.
It's interesting, Sue, I don't want to cut you off, but I noticed when I was younger and I had issues that really bothered me, I would stuff it there. I felt, if you had a problem or an issue,
right.
and you didn't want to eat, literally, if something was bothering you so much, and you felt that tightness in your stomach.
Exactly. Right. So, and then our heart, our heart chakra, and which is our connection, our center of connection with all that is. Okay. And as Magdalene said many times to me, you are love in a human form. You are made of love. You are the energy of love in a human form. You are truth being revealed. And the truth comes from within outward. All the knowledge is within. This was always what was written over the doors of all the mystery schools through time on this planet. The teacher is within. And all the knowledge is within, in every cell of our body, actually, in every particle of our consciousness flowing in, through, and around us. We connect with the all that is, God, Goddess.
And this is the heart's also the transition, right? Because the lower three are sort of earthbound, and then the top three are spiritual, and the heart. So the heart really is that transition. It probably has a foot in both worlds, does it not?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely want to express love energy out into the world and to ourselves and so on, and to all that is. And this enhances our ability to perceive, feel, see, experience beauty as well, and joy and peace. So these are all qualities of 5D qualities. The vibrational dimensions could be expressed as qualities of being. Right. So when we drop down into a 3D consciousness, that's where we'll feel doubts, insecurities, be tormented by our thoughts, etc., worries, plans, strategizing, not trusting. So trusting God, trusting ourself is a quality of 5D vibrational awareness and consciousness, and living in a 5D state of being is loving ourselves, loving everything, everybody, trusting ourself, trusting what comes through us, trusting our insights, intuitions, our feelings, and also perceiving beauty, especially in Mother Earth and in other people and in a novel that we read, whatever it is, perceiving beauty and knowing truth, feeling it, knowing it when we see it, right? We know it when we see it. We know it when we feel it. We know it when we hear it.
And I know these are very difficult, and we're going to take our first break now. And I know these are very difficult. And again, as I said in my intro, we can sort of understand them conceptually. And when we get back from the break, I'd like to talk a little bit about strategies that you and others, employ to try to stay in 5D. So we'll get back into that after the break. Hi, welcome back to Mind to Heart with Craig Richardson and my guest, Jules Maloney. Jules has an email address under her name if you want to get a hold of her, and my website is craigericardson.com. Jules, before the break, you were talking beautifully conceptually about 5D, and I know personally there's certain things that I trigger me, and I'm sort of learning to turn it off, but yes. It's not always easy to stay in 5D, is it? And what are some of the practical or things that people can do to try to fight that culture pulling us into 3D?
It is an evolution in our own experience to allow ourselves to be freer and freer. and to enter into a flow state that can become actually a permanent flow state where we honor, we're honest when we need to say no to something, for example, and we know when we get the go ahead to do anything, whatever it may be. So it's really about freeing ourselves, including freeing ourselves from the past. I mean, this does take healing work. We all have a lot to clear and heal and release from our past just in this lifetime, as well as things we may carry in to resolve. Our soul is carrying into this lifetime to resolve from other lifetimes to complete. And this can happen in relationships. It can happen in the work we do as service to others and to the planet. And this is so we need to do the clearing work and the healing work. And there's so many now alternative healing modalities, from energy work of all kinds, Reiki being one of those, but there's tons of energy healing work now, and clearing work, and working with our shadow aspects. We also need to face our shadow aspects and not run from them or suppress them, and then ultimately embrace them into our wholeness. Both our darkness and our light we embrace into our wholeness, and it turns into light, instead of being kept in the shadow. So there's the healing work needs to be done as we go along, and things will come to our attention that are the ones for us. The assistance, the universe, God us, is always assisting us, and bringing to our attention those things that will move us forward in our own freedom. Coming back to that keynote for the Aquarian age being freedom. And another keynote of the Aquarian age is group efforts, being part of groups, learning with groups.
Basically.
Yeah. So this is what we're getting into, and our technology is mirroring this for us, is a development of this Aquarian mentality where we are all connected now globally, and in so much communication going on, and humanity as a center of consciousness, a center of planetary consciousness, is the throat chakra, and which is about creativity and community and communicating. So this is what we're doing now. We're going to keep doing a lot of this, of global communicating and group communicating, as we move together into higher states of consciousness and greater inner peace, freedom, flexibility, movement, greater light, greater truth, awakening. This is what awakening all is. So it's of course very exciting, and it's
although the challenge, I guess, too, in that same communication system can also have messages that are trying to do the opposite, are they not? I mean, you mentioned the media, isn't it? So
yes.
It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, or you need to be selective in how you use this technology. I mean, it is great. I now have friends around the world, but at the same time, I've made a conscious decision, and I can't buy into what passes as news these days. It's to me, it's too
absolutely. Well, there is another element here, which is that there have been dark forces on the planet that there and have been around for thousands of years on this planet, and their time is really coming to an end. But that the qualities of the dark forces is control, greed, total control. And that also means control of our minds. And the way that is done most typically these days is through media, through news, television, commercials, movies, etc. Many ways, because that's an easy way to subconsciously imprint messages into the subconscious. And we've seen a great example of that this past year, where a virus was released. It was fanned the flame through the media, that it was fanning the flame of the fear of death in humanity, which is a huge fear, is the fear of death in humanity. It's enormous. So that's a very easy way to activate a lot of fear in the human system, in the human consciousness, which it did. But, you know, the dark forces never win anymore, because they can't win. You know, my mother used to say, you cannot kill the human spirit. The human spirit always wins. Why? Because the human spirit is love, and is at its highest divine. So it always overcomes, right? So then this timeout period has become a period of a lot of reorientation for people, right? Because we couldn't have business as usual. We couldn't have the same old. And a lot more came forward of people questioning narratives, questioning the dark force narratives that come through, and taking a stand. See, these are all issues of freedom. Personal freedom and personal sovereignty. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about this quality of this age we're now living in, being freedom and divine sovereignty, is for us to know our own truth, and then to have the courage to stand in our truth.
Well, I think you hit the operative word, is courage, right? And for some reason, we all selected this time period. So we must have been, I think we knew what we were getting into. I don't know if once had we known what it would have been like, but we are literally in that transition. I mean, we're, you know, I can remember the 60s, the end of the 60s. And I mean, it's been contentious in a lot of ways. And I think we've sort of segued from outer conflicts of war. Now it's almost more insidious, which is sort of psychological warfare, really, what we're facing now. Yes,
that's right.
And so I think one of the things too you mentioned in the first segment, which is a course that I took at AU, was mindfulness. So I would imagine that you have probably a pretty robust meditation practice, or you're in Sedona, that helps, I know. So where you live is a big factor too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and meditating all through the day, just becoming more centered, peaceful, stopping for mindful breathing often, just being in nature. I mean, I've been in Sedona 20 years, and the first 4 years I was here, I spent for years a lot of time on the land, but just doing nothing, just lying on the rocks, just being in nature is a huge gift that we can give ourselves to transition into states of more peacefulness, inner peace, quiet, etc. Compassion for ourselves, for everything. And nature is absolute magic, and a reflection to us of the life force itself, of beauty, and of a deep serenity as well as joy. So to go out in nature anytime is such a gift to ourselves.
Well, again, I think what this last year did, the silver lining was it did give people some time. Traffic was less, and people spent more time at home. I mean, they spent more time walking and doing all that. And I do think that that's a critically important period for all of that.
It is. It's been a huge reorientation. And I think at this stage in this reorientation, people are realizing we are not going back to normal. We don't want to go back to normal like it was a year ago and before. We're going somewhere new, which is the truth. We're somewhere new.
We're taking their narrative, the new normal, which I never bought into. You want to see a new normal? We'll show you a new normal.
Yeah. We're going into a much more expanded, light-filled, love-filled, bursting with creativity, period. And that's what's happening. And I'm very big on intentions and making intentions, calling things forth. I mean, you can call forth the light, golden white light to come in through and around you, etc. You can be conscious of your crown chakra being open, which is rays of light, literally from the top of your head, a crown of light opening and receiving continually from source. Frequencies of light, color, sound, healing, insight, messages, awarenesses, etc., in, through, and around you to activate you, elevate you. And we keep rising. I mean, this is what ascension really is in a very simple terms. It's the rising of vibration and frequency. So you see, the more we divest ourselves of old burdens, baggage, traumas, we divest ourselves of all the old baggage. We lighten, literally lighten our load, lighten our body, lighten our spirit, lighten our minds, lighten our emotions. We lighten everything up. Okay. And that is what enlightening is. And in that process, we are raising literally our vibrations. We are literally raising our frequencies, our hertz, our megahertz. Right. And we're attuning ourselves to a higher vibration and a much larger consciousness.
Well, that was beautifully said. And I'm going to take this opportunity now to say we're going to enter into another break, but it's a perfect segue into, as I said, Jules, you're amazingly inspirational. When we get to the second part, I want to see sort of where you were and then how you got to being able to not only explain it the way you did, but to live your life. So we'll get into the story of Jules when we get back on the second. Hi, welcome back to Mind to Heart with Craig Richardson and my guest today, Jules Maloney. Again, if my website is craigericardson.com, and under Jules' bottom third, you'll see her email address, and we'll get into what she's up to towards the last part of the show. But as we went to break, Jules was giving those kinds of experiences that I had last year during my course, which is why I really love taking her. She gets, into these definitions of what it means to live in the present and to be awoken and ascension. And I think it's important that because obviously she's focused a lot of her life now, 20 years in Sedona, but I'm sure, Jules, it wasn't always like that, right? You didn't come into this world as a baby fully ascended and saying, hey, this is great, I'm going to be channeling for Christ and the Magdalene. And so let's start with the basics. Where did you grow up, and what kind of family life did you have, et cetera?
I grew up in northern New York, Watertown, New York, which is where the St. Lawrence River meets Lake Ontario.
Oh, pretty far north.
I was born in 1955. My father was a lawyer, my mother a homemaker. You know how life was in the 50s. But I had a very loving family, very loving family. My mother's parents also lived in the same town, and we shared the summer house where my mother had grown up and my grandmother had grown up, and now my nieces and nephews and the next two more generations.
Oh, neat. They held on to it. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And, so there was all the codependency programs, I think, that most of us grew up with from the 50s, taking care of other people, that kind of thing. But, you had asked me in a question, you asked me about what kind of scripts did I get? And the ones that I remember now, because I've come into a state of divine union in my life at this point where I don't think anymore. So I can't remember the scripts because I've worked through all those scripts during my healing work of 20 years, right? So what I remember my mother saying to all of us kids often was, love one another. Love one another. And her saying that the human spirit will always win, will always overcome.
You mentioned that, and that was pretty unique, I think. I mean, I'm an early 60s baby, but I mean, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the mother did provide a lot of that nurturing love.
Yes. So I went to an all-women's college, one of the 7 sister colleges. My mother had gone there, and I knew she wanted me to go there. I wanted to go to Hampshire College, which was a new alternative
But my cousin
college.
went there, yeah, and I know that area too. I'm a Massachusetts guy. I keep thinking of James Taylor from Stockbridge, Boston, right? Isn't that?
Yes, yes. That was the first concert I ever saw, James
Oh, is that
Taylor.
right?
Yes. But my senior year, I had seen a poster the year before to go to school in Oxford. And so in the fall of my senior year, I went to a program in Oxford, England, to school.
And what year was that? Because that was a pretty crazy time, wasn't it? Like was that late 60s?
1976.
Oh, okay, wow, yeah, that was,
1976.
yeah, you're my brother's age.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I had a lot of experiences there that were incredible. And I did a lot of traveling while I was over there too, in Belgium, France, Spain, Morocco. And it was a very stretching, expanding kind of time. But when I came back, I was out visiting a friend in California, and he would give me his VW van during the day, and I'd just explore around. And one day I was at the beach. This is in Southern California near Newport Beach. And I was just lying on the beach or sitting on the beach watching the light on the waves of the Pacific Ocean. And I had what I later came to call an at-one-ment experience. I was 21. It was my 22nd year, 1977. And during those moments of that at-one-ment experience, I realized that there was no death. Everything was alive forever. That I was God, you're God, everything is God. There is nowhere God is not. God is every particle and wave. And now I say God, Goddess, Mother, Father, God.
Right.
And the work that I did with the Magdalene brought this forth too, as far as looking at the feminine Christ as well as the masculine Christ.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So now we're coming into this wholeness, see, of the masculine and feminine within us, marrying the sacred marriage of our own inner divine masculine and feminine. Anyway, that this awakening that I had then was super profound. I've never been the same since. And in fact, afterwards, I could not really remember who I was before.
Wow. And but you still had to do, I mean, day-to-day stuff. You got a career and you taught
Well,
school.
not for a while. Not for a while. I had to go through 3 years then after that of a dark night of the soul.
Ooh.
Or in the esoteric traditions, they call it meeting the dweller on the threshold. Wow. Or the dark night of the soul, where all of my own dark sides, things I was ashamed of, guilty of, whatever, etc. I had to face all of my shadow aspects during that period, my own shadow aspects, but I was also facing the shadow aspects of the collective of humanity, particularly the Catholic Church and all religions, which had suppressed the feminine and which had taught people that there was something wrong with them and that they were separate from God, basically, that they were separate from God. And and that was one of the collective consciousness elements during that period that I also had to face and dissolve, demolish, dissolve, forgive, transmute. And it was a period, there was quite a cleansing.
Well, that must have been pretty intense. I mean,
It was
Jesus only had 40 days in the desert and you had 3 years.
3 years, yeah. It was very, very intense. And of course, no one understood me either. So my ego defenses were broken down, see, in that awakening experience, that oneness with God that I experienced, my ego defenses and everything were broken down as well. So then there was healing after that, then there had to come healing.
Did you
And
stay in California or did you come back
oh,
east?
no, I came back. I came back to New York and was there for 3 more years then, going through this experience. I mean, I couldn't really participate in the outer world too much during that period at all. And after that, I went to Boston, and then I started working with young children, a daycare center at Harvard, and
Well,
also
given what
doing.
you went through, I'm sure children were probably the ones you could relate to the most. The
They
young.
were, they were, and I learned so much from them. I learned so much. I worked with babies to 5-year-olds, and
I mean,
I learned so much from them. I also got involved with the disarmament movement at that
yeah.
time. I was working with a group called Food Not Bombs, and going to a lot of rallies, making food, bringing food to these rallies, and et cetera.
So the
And
Clamshell Alliance, I remember.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I remember as a
it was
kid,
part of it.
WBCN
Yes,
used to play those ads all the time. And
that's right. The Clamshell Alliance emerged then into more nuclear disarmament work and so on. And I was the media coordinator for the June 12th rally in 1992. 1 million people went to Central Park, and I
neat.
did all the media work for Boston, and 40,000 people went from Boston to that rally. So that was a fun period, and I was in a band. I was with a lot of artists, a lot of street theater and poetry readings, and et cetera. It was a very creative time in my life. But then I wanted to move out of Boston, and I went back to Amherst, and I got guided to go into a master's and doctoral program in creativity at UMass.
Oh, neat.
So my life has always kind of been guided. It's been guided, and I follow.
Well, you're very smart, and we're going to take our last break. But when we get back, I want to pick up there, and because I really want to get into, Boston or Massachusetts to Sedona, and
Yes.
also what you're doing. Can you just say your email address for people to get a hold of you?
Jules Maloney at gmail.com.
Jules Maloney email. That's easy to remember, and we'll pick up the story when we get back from the break. Hi, and welcome back to Mind to Heart with your host, Craig Richardson, and my guest today, Jules Maloney. Again, Jules' email address is julesmaloney@gmail.com, and you can find me at craigericardson.com. Well, Jules, when we went to the break, you were back in Amherst, and you were getting a master's in education. So why don't we pick up from there?
Yes. So I did that, and it was wonderful getting a master's and doctorate in creativity. UMass was in a very creative period at that time. You could get a master's and doctorate in international education, in diversity education, in creativity. It was a wonderful time to be there. But anyway, after that, I got a job in Montana, Dillon, Montana, and I was there for 7 years. And then, of course, I had a sabbatical coming up after 7 years. And I did a huge amount of stuff at Western Montana College, tons and tons of stuff. And including, I created a nature-based school for children, 2 to 12-year-olds, to show all the things I'd been teaching the teachers. But anyway, for the sabbatical, I knew I was going to go to a hot springs in California, Harbin Hot Springs, a place I loved because I really needed some healing and relaxation, deep relaxation after like 80-hour work weeks for 7 years. But I also realized as I was getting ready for that sabbatical that I was not coming back to Western. And I let the dean of the faculty know, and he actually started crying, and he said, "Oh, you can't leave. You're the heart of our program." But I knew, and this is how it's always worked for me. I got the inner call, the inner intuition that I just knew I was complete. And I went into a state of spaciousness then, and not knowing what was coming next, not needing to know either, which is another difference of 3D and 5D consciousness. Right. Okay. So anyway, being at the hot springs for a year was extremely healing and relaxing, nourishing to my soul. I also started a children's center there,
Oh, wow.
nature-based children's center there, which was mostly for infants and toddlers who were part of the community there then. And I learned a lot from them doing that for a year. But then I left Harbin with a dearly beloved person from Harbin, and we went to different hot springs in the West for a while. And then one night he stood up and he said, "It's time to take you to Sedona."
Oh, wow.
And we came down into Sedona from, Flagstaff up at the top of Oak Creeks at 7,500 feet. We drove down into the Red Rocks, and every turn I was like, etc. And so now I've been in Sedona for 20 years, since 2001, with a few periods in southern New Mexico at a hot springs and in
But as you were
Hawaii.
driving in, you just knew, right? This is where
I knew. And I was later told in a reading with someone, this beautiful woman from Belgium that I love and sometimes get readings with. And she said, "This is where you came into the planet in Sedona, eons ago. This is where you came in, and this is where you're leaving
There's
from."
a big portal there, isn't it? I mean, the Hopis have there's somewhere. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know if it's actually said. I mean, I watch Ancient Aliens sometimes, and they'll cover, and I've seen those rocks where the paintings are, and they talk about the star people, and that's not too
Oh,
far.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And there was a lot of talk about the star people when I first got here. I really opened up to the galactic consciousness and, et cetera, and seeing starships and this and that. But yeah, it's all the vortexes in Sedona. That's what Sedona is known for, is all these vortexes, these portals of energy everywhere in the landscape here. And because a lot of ley lines, which are the energy meridians of Mother Earth herself, that flow and crisscross through the earth, the telluric energy, lots of ley lines come through and cross here in large ley lines, and a lot of them coming together, crossing, and they create these vortexes of energy. So it's a very high frequency place. And I synchronistically, again, got hooked up with the Sedona Heart Center and Vortex Tours, which was a soul group, really, a soul family who came together around this woman, Suzanne, who started the Sedona Heart Center, and all healers of all kinds. And this is why I got to do so much healing work, as well as offering healing work, Reiki, integrated energy therapy, emotional release, inner journeys, also taking people on the land all the time.
And you transformed yourself too.
Exactly. It was all a big transformational cauldron. So it was in 2007, and I was doing readings for people also, spiritual readings, soul readings for people as well, as one of the modalities that I worked in here. But on Christmas Day, 2007, I got my first channeling in writing from the Magdalene. And then I kept writing, as well as bringing it in during work with other people and readings with people and things like that. And so I gathered a lot of that together in my first book, which is called Mary Magdalene, the Christos Sophia Revelation. That's available on Amazon and a lot of places. And I also have a book called Every Child is Holy, which was a very short summary of all the things that I most wanted to communicate to teachers of young children and parents of young children about children and their creativity and their spirituality, and what children really need, what they really need is to be in nature as much as possible.
Yes,
and so on. So I have that little book, Every Child is Holy, and the Christos Sophia book. And just on February 2nd on Imbolc, I finished the second Christos Sophia Revelation Volume 2, which I'm not making into a book this time. I'm just sending it out to people as a PDF.
So they can email you for that?
Yes.
JulesMaloney@gmail.com.
Yes. And you asked me too about sharing some of the teachings the Christos Sophia.
Yeah.
This all morphed, and this I talk about this in this second book, and I also talk about the different deaths we go through and rebirths. Okay, and these are psychological deaths and rebirths. So the first one for me was in 1977 when I had that awakening and at-one-ment experience, and I couldn't remember my earlier life because a higher aspect of my own soul came in at that time to embody here. Okay. And a lot of people, you may know the thing about walk-ins. A lot of people have had experience of walk-ins, higher aspects of their own soul or other galactic beings or whatever coming in. Well, for me, it was a higher aspect of my own signature, energy signature, or my soul coming in, which I call Jules before I was Julie Elizabeth Maloney.
Okay.
Right. So that was like a death.
Well,
and
we
another
only
rebirth.
we only have a couple minutes left, and I want you to, if you could
great.
get that, because julesmaloney@gmail.com is your email. I want you to kind of leave us with a teaser or something that people can, because and I'm going to read it too, so you'll need to send that to me.
Yes. Well, I'll just read a few minutes of it then here, of the second book here. And it begins with, the new earth is arising. When we see beauty, when we see peace, when we see magic, then this is what we create. Our world becomes this at the same moment we see it. When we see the beauty and love in others, in anyone, their true nature is enhanced and made even stronger by being seen. Everyone and everything connected with Mother Earth is in an awesome process of transformation and ascension. Ascension is the increase in frequency and vibration of every electron comprising life on this planet and all of creation. It is in this ascension energy and process, our consciousness expands and creates more spaciousness and inner peace within. We are all destined to co-create a sacred existence on our beautiful Mother Earth. As we clear and heal all our old wounds and subconscious programs, we are releasing all that we are not to make more room and spaciousness within us for all that we truly are. What we truly are is love, light, color, wisdom, joy, peace, harmony, creativity, and more. As we open to more of all that we are, our creativity opens along with our heart, and we tap into visions, ideas, insights of how to bring a new earth into existence, a world of peace, love, community, creativity, and fulfillment for one and all.
That was absolutely beautiful. And I don't know how better to end our time together here, Jules. I would love to hear you read it for a whole another hour, but I knew you would warm my heart and everybody listening. So I really want to thank you for being my guest today, Jules Maloney.
Thank you, Craig.
My email is craigyrichardson.com. And thank you for joining this week's program, Mind to Heart. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Mind to Heart with me, Craig Richardson. My path has led me from the Protestant and Catholic churches, as well as studies in alchemy, mediumship, Eastern philosophy, and most recently, Edgar Cayce and transpersonal psychology. As an intuitive life coach, I am ready to guide you to an amazing life. For more information about me, visit craigyrichardson.com.